and it may be just a little bit later than normal, but somebody had a doctor's appointment, so we gotta work with life. But I'm told this is the only one of the season. So
Right.
from sunnyish Central Florida, I'm Wesh 2 meteorologist Eric Burris.
And in Savannah, Georgia, I'm WJCL 22 Chief Meteorologist Jeremy Nelson. And you have a few storms down your way today.
Yeah, we do, as a matter of fact, Jeremy. Yeah, the satellite and radar kind of showing the story right now. It's not tropical in nature per se, but it's a part of a weather pattern that we know is going to produce some nasty weather across much of the deep south these next couple of days.
Yeah, we have a marginal risk of severe storms over my area today, and it looks like already some stormy weather down by you. And this may sort of meander its way into the Northeast or the Northern Gulf, weak area of low pressure. Nothing highlighted by the National Hurricane Center. We'll see. Maybe we get one of those like 10 or 20% areas, but no one model really has any interest in developing this.
That's right. So for now, it's just kind of stormy weather. We've had flash flood warnings in Central Florida today because of this piece of energy. And if you're a kind of person that likes to follow along with our long range forecasting, this at the very least is a reflection of the Sarah part of the weather pattern, which, for right now, again, does not look like it's wanting to develop anything tropical. But looking at this part of the weather pattern as it cycles around and around, July 22nd through the 29th is a time frame we kind of have to watch the Big Bend of Florida all the way through the coast of Louisiana. And depending on kind of how this progresses, it'll be one additional look before we get into the September recycle of this, Jeremy.
Yeah, and typically we always talk about this in terms of those dates we highlight. It's usually either the second or the third on the list if we're going to see tropical development. That's when it occurs when you get closer to the peak of hurricane season. We're not quite there yet. We're still in July, June, July, two out of the quietest months of the Atlantic hurricane season. But once you get into August, you would certainly start to expect some activity to ramp up. And at the moment, things are looking quiet. We know that can change pretty quickly.
Absolutely. You had mentioned it, so I figured I'd pull this up. These are the numbers to kind of give you an idea. Here we are kind of approaching the end of July, and you do notice that that ticks upward pretty dramatically, looking ahead to, late July, but certainly August, September, even into October. That really is kind of peak hurricane season. So while we've still been relatively quiet, as you mentioned, Jeremy, things should start ramping up here pretty quickly.
Yeah, and as we were talking about when we were showing some of those dates, we also get into that time frame where we get into that first half of October, and that's a bit of a transition period for us. So some of these lows or disturbances may come back in some form in the that front half of October. So we've had, at least in terms of like name storms, ACE, a quiet start to the Atlantic hurricane season, almost 2 months in. The names were a little bit ahead. Last year we were at three, average getting close to about 2.5 there. So the other metrics, though, were all behind, which you can talk about.
Yeah, yeah. So even into like storm days, like days with named storms, we've only had two and a half this entire season. And that's what I think is interesting. If you look at it, last year we had three named storms. This year we had three named storms. But look at the named storm days. Last year we had 11 and a half days with a named storm. This year we've only had two and a half. So this year, it's been kind of these little almost like 6 hour, 12 hour, 24 hour, like pop up, there's a name, go away kind of thing. Whereas last year we had Beryl, which was a large hurricane. It was the first Cabo Verde Island, kind of first main development region storm, went right through and was a powerful storm. But it's just interesting. And when you talk about ACE, this is the kind of the nerdiest of nerd facts. Accumulated cyclonic energy. As the bigger the storm, the longer the storm lasts, the higher the number. This year's ACE is sitting at 1.5. The 30-year average through today is 8.5. In 2024, last year, we had developed 35 ACE points. Again, because we had had a much stronger storm already this time of year.
Yeah, and if we get through the first week of August without another named storm or another maybe very brief storm, we are going to start falling way behind on ACE, especially when you compare it to last year, because that first week of August last year, we had Hurricane Debbie in the Gulf, and then It got busy. It did get a little busy after that.
Yeah, well, and we're going to look at the models here in a couple of minutes. I would suspect that we're going to start to see more and more activity, but the one thing that has really been that limiting factor, Jeremy, has been that Saharan dust. And look, I mean, there's just a massive plume again coming off the coast of Africa through the Sahara Desert. They've not started their monsoonal flow there in Africa just yet. That's why we're not getting these massive waves coming off just yet.
Yeah, and if you notice that little area southeast of like the Windward Leeward Islands, we did have an area of interest out there over the last couple days that has faded away. But that low, it was there, a little spin to it, some showers and thunderstorms, and then it just gets chewed up by all that dry air, gets ingested into it, and then just dissipates. So we don't even have an area of interest at the moment.
Right. So, with that said, then I guess it's a good time to just kind of start looking at some of the computer models. What say you?
Yeah, we
Right.
can look ahead here, maybe 10 plus days.
Right. So let's start. We'll look at the full basin view. All right. And we'll start with the American GFS model and give you an idea. So, first and foremost, we're nice and quiet for right now. Love that for us. Let's just roll through time. And as I see things, if something stands out, then we'll point it out. Right off the bat, let me come back from the basin view. Let me get into the Gulf view for just a moment here because there's this little piece of energy riding through and along the northern Gulf Coast. And there's some indication that there could be some broken area of low pressure trying to form through about the 25th. Jeremy, we had talked about how this fits our long term, long range weather pattern. The model, though, does not seem to want to go to anything too strong.
No, I think this will probably just be a weak low, not develop, at least tropical in nature, but it could give some heavy rains again to parts, maybe the Gulf Coast, Florida, the Southeast, as that meanders around here. We do have some elevated rain chances
Yep.
in my viewing
Yep.
area
Yep.
today, tomorrow, possibly even into Thursday.
Yep. All right. So back out to the wide view. In addition to that, just watching and notice something, I'm just going to take this a few ticks back. Look at how coming off of the Cabo Verde Islands there, you see that right there?
Yep.
Riding along, what is that? That's the like 10th parallel, 10 degrees
That's
north latitude. That's awful far south.
right.
But that model is at least trying to show something there. And then it starts to recurve out near the Antilles by about the 31st of July and become nothing. And then look at that, just sea of high pressure. And then there may be a little something out east, old front, a lot of high pressure. Of course, look at that, around that's August 5th, 6th, little piece of energy developing off the coast of like Georgia, South Carolina. And at least this model showing perhaps something trying to ride up near the Outer Banks. You see that there?
Yeah, I also think there may be something sneaky again, maybe in that like subtropical or that north central area of the Atlantic. A few models have been kind of hinting at that. Sometimes those sneak up, they can develop pretty quickly.
Right.
They're not a threat to any land up there, and basically all they do is check a name off the list.
Yeah, well, and I feel like that's kind of the way this season has been thus far, is just checking the names off the list, right? We've had those
Yep.
three named storms. Thankfully, nothing too big, but we've had them. All right, let's switch over to the European model. Let's just check and see. Ba, 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 ba. Again, Northern Gulf watching. I'll just zoom into it here just because. The Euro, that's the 24th, a weak area of low pressure, nothing significant. So love that. Back out to the basin view. Some sort of a storm system there in the central Atlantic. Thankfully, nothing of consequence. We'll go back to the end of this. That's the 6Z run. We'll go back to the 0Z to be able to go a little further out. Right there, you see that around the 29th, 30th. There's an area of low pressure. I mean, that's a 997 low, pulling out
Right.
again, staying out past the Canadian Maritimes, but it's something. It's something that this is the European is definitely going in on.
Yeah, and again, that's late in that model run, but I will say this: that's pretty close to where Andrea
Yep.
formed, and that was almost about 40 days before that. We'll see how it plays out, but there almost should be a low somewhere in that area. Not
Yeah.
saying it's going to be tropical,
Right.
but that's a long ways out. Again, probably not much of a threat to land. We'll monitor that. Otherwise, that main development region, until we get the dust out of there, likely not going to be a whole lot.
Well, and love that for us, right? But that also just kind of means that hurricane season at the moment is going to be shut off for significant development chances. And until that dust is completely settled, we're going to be able to sit back and enjoy. But that does not mean that it's going to stay that way. We know eventually this dust goes away and things are going to get very, very active. And when it does, you know, if it fits into that timeline of the weather pattern where we know that there's because I feel like it's 50% of our cycling pattern is fairly active, 50% of it is complete crickets.
Right. And if for some reason the dust is hanging around more August, potentially into September, then um, numbers as a whole for the season could be reduced. But then we have that sort of the wild card, whatever happens in October into November. And while we're probably not into a La Nina by then, some of the like the NOAA forecasts are trending towards maybe a winter La Nina, or the
Yep.
chances are increasing for that. So we may start to get by mid to late fall, if we're still in hurricane season here, a little more favorable winds, and then you're kind of racing against waters cooling
Right.
off and
Right.
stronger upper level winds. So we'll see. This could end up being a backloaded season if it does pick up.
Well, and the other thing too is if you don't have any storms to significantly upwell, then it's still just sitting boiling hot and it's going to be a bit maybe slower to cool on the backside too.
Yeah, that's very true. And we really don't get any cold fronts, at least in my area, until you get into almost October.
Right.
So there's nothing's going to be cooling us down here anytime soon.
No, October, God. October, I feel like we always get that one teaser front. You know what I mean? Like in Florida,
Right.
hey, winter or fall is here, and then it's back to 900 degrees. So, you
Yep.
know. All right. One thing I did want to do is I wanted to show the Madden Julian oscillation. I thought that this could be kind of an interesting thing to look at. The Madden Julian oscillation just looks at tropical development favorability is kind of the best way, where you've got a little extra spin and lift, that sort of thing. The green colors denote where things are favorable, the browns don't. We're kind of a little ish in phase, Caribbean into the Atlantic basin. But look at how it's all brown all the way through the end of July. And then we get a little bit, perhaps, of favorability that first week of August. But that's it. So, in other words, the Madden Julian oscillation does not look to be quite favorable for the Atlantic basin, what we track through about August 5th or so.
Yeah, but then you would think that it would start coming back into cycle maybe mid to late August
Yep.
or somewhere in
Yep.
there, and then you're starting to line up with peak hurricane season,
Yep.
and that's probably when we'd have to start watching things a lot closer.
And that's the problem. If you can line that up the wrong way, we get the right dynamics for a bad setup. And Max Mayfield, former director from the National Hurricane Center, was always so fantastic about pointing out it takes one storm in your neighborhood to make it a terrible season. So it doesn't matter if there's one system or 20 systems. If that one system, in his case, he always referred to that August hurricane that struck Dade County, it wasn't Miami-Dade County yet, struck Dade County. It was Category 5 Hurricane Andrew, and we know what happened there. It completely changed the dynamics of how buildings are built in Florida, for goodness sake, among many other things.
And it's just wild to think that we were that far into the season and that was the first named storm.
Right, right. Now, granted, multi-decadal cycles, we used to have lowered storm numbers than we do today, technology, satellite data, etc. But, point taken, absolutely. All right, so Adam on YouTube is asking this question. What does the Atlantic Nina do or don't do for the hurricane season? I think that's a fantastic question, Jeremy. You want to start it off?
Wait, so what are we talking about, like an ENSO
Yeah, like
here?
what does the El Nino versus La Nina do for hurricane season?
Well, La Nina typically gives you more favorable winds,
Right.
so you may not have as much shear. So if you get a little low going, it may be in a little more protected environment versus El Nino, which would be some stronger winds.
Right. So this is the La Nina pattern. Weaker winds, meaning that you get the opportunity for tropical development much easier. Whereas in the summer pattern, El Nino, typically warmer waters in the Pacific, which means maybe some subtly cooler waters in the Atlantic, but it generates more wind shear. So when it comes to tracking the tropics, think about it, you could think about it like this. El Nino means fewer storms. La Nina means more storms, which is why, as Jeremy had mentioned earlier, if we start phasing La Nina by the end of this hurricane season, that would lead us to perhaps a backloaded season.
Yeah, and again, from what we're looking at here, short term, pretty quiet, maybe all the way into August,
Right.
and then we'd have to be mid to late August, potentially for some of that rising air to start moving over the basin where we could see some development. So maybe next week we'll still be talking about it's quiet.
Right. Maybe we'll have some things on the models to track. But yeah, for right now, no development expected over the next 7 days' time. So, any other questions, comments, concerns? Otherwise, we can get rolling. The good news is with it being quiet, we've had plenty of opportunity, Jeremy, to make sure to talk about the tropics, and we've had plenty of opportunity to make sure to discuss peak being a ways away. I don't want to hear when hurricanes threaten your area or my area. First off, I don't want that to happen at all, but I don't want to hear anybody saying, "Oh, we had no warning." Because this is the warning time that when the skies are clear is when we need to um, be getting ourselves ready for the storms.
Yeah. So it's quiet now. Test out all your equipment that you need. Make sure you have your hurricane kits resupplied. I know last year all of us, probably at some point from Florida up through my area, had to use something in your hurricane kit, or at least go check it out, make sure it was there. Make sure you're ready to go.
Yeah. Yep. Agreed. All right, buddy. Is that it? Is that it? That's all I've got.
Yeah, that should be it for today.
Very good. All right. Listen, thank you all for joining us for Tracking the Tropics Tuesday. We'll be back at 10 next Tuesday. I was just teasing you off the top, my friend. Life happens.
Right.
So, all right. From stormy-ish Central Florida, I'm West 2 meteorologist Eric Burris.
And in Savannah, Georgia, I'm WJCL 22 Chief Meteorologist Jeremy Nelson.